Hello everyone, welcome back to Dove Cooper Talks About Stuff, also known as Ramblin'. And you will not be able to see him very easily, but I have a circus on my lap. If you're very lucky, the microphone will catch him purring. But anyway, so I am Dove Cooper, and I wanted to talk about the way that I've divided cozy science fiction and fantasy on my direct store, because I think, it's an interesting topic to talk about. So roughly last month, I think it was, I did a series of videos on cozy science fiction and fantasy, where I, talked about what are the current definitions that people are using, what kind of elements go into making a book cozy, and why do they work the way that they do, as well as like what are some of the influences that you can find when people talk about cozy science fiction and fantasy. And if you've watched those videos, you will have noticed that my lovely graph no, don't. I love you, but do not lie on the keyboard. He ruined a previous video that I was doing because he pressed the pause button. Silly cat. But so anyway, if you've watched the previous series of videos that I did, you will notice that my graph diagram thing of cozy fantasy was basically there's this bit that people know, and there is this bit that people will chuck out of cozy science fiction and fantasy because it's not in that tiny bit. And I didn't really look or define it any further than that. And shortly after I finished that video, I decided to look at my direct shop and try and sort that, and quickly came to the conclusion that I needed to make subdivisions in cozy science fiction and fantasy to make sure that people actually found what they were looking for and they could read what they wanted and not what they didn't. So slight history for the way that this term evolved and came around. So the concepts for cozy science fiction and fantasy have been around for a couple of decades, and people have been looking for a term for this type of fiction for at least 10 years. We've tried out different things, we've landed on different terms. One of the big ones was slice of life, which isn't quite the same. Another one was cozy bright, which a lot of us, especially marginalized authors, didn't like, especially queer marginalized authors, because that was too close to noble bright, which has very strong Christian overtones. So we were like, well, people were using different terms for their fiction all over, and nobody was really big enough for any particular term to really catch on. And then 2020 roughly happened with TJ Klune's, I never remember the book, it's the Cerulean Sea one, I never remember the title, it's The House something Cerulean Sea. The House in the Cerulean Sea, I think it is. But that used cozy a lot in the marketing, and more or less from there the term cozy fantasy started to catch on, roughly until 2022, where it was used very specifically to market the trad-pop version of Legends and Lattes. After which, for about 2 years, cozy fantasy took off like nobody's business and narrowed in scope significantly from where it was 2 years ago before then. And then around 2004, 2005, marketing moved on into romantasy. You still see a lot of cozy books there, because cozy romantasy is also a thing. But marketing has kind of moved on to romantasy as the next big thing. And the end result of this huge mainstream visibility for cozy fantasy is genuinely that a lot of people writing cozy fantasy who had literally just found a word to describe their fiction already lost it because it didn't match the particular dominant view of how people view cozy fantasy. Cozy science fiction got completely chucked out, but it did basically end up with the same problem, where using the word cozy meant that people were expecting a certain type of book that did not necessarily fit the book that the author was writing, even though as a overarching genre, the books were still cozy. And so that's kind of the position that I was in as an author, is like I write cozy science fiction and fantasy, but not all I write is within that very small percentage of books that people consider cozy if they're not very well versed in the genre, or if they're very specifically looking for that particular type of book. And looking at my books and the ways that I could divide them, I basically wound up with okay, so there are different flavors of cozy, and that is basically what I probably should be doing, is make sure that when people pick up a book, they have a better idea of what type of cozy to expect. Because when you read a lot of books or you talk to a lot of people about books, especially cozy fantasy, you will notice very quickly that some people have very strong preferences for the type of cozy that they want. I will very happily read anything, but I need to be in a particular mindset to read the mainstream dominant definition of cozy. And a lot of my friends are like, well, this is not the type of cozy book that I want, whereas other friends of mine are like, well, that other type of cozy is not the type of book that I want. It's like, what do you do? How do you divide them? So that's what I did with my books. I'm pretty much too tiny for it to catch on, but I'm hoping that, it will still be interesting to people and, be interesting, basically. Maybe people will find some use in it, maybe they won't. We'll see. So the first thing that I did was look at the type of cozy that existed. If you've watched the previous videos, you will know that I tend to call this rosy sweet or rosy bright, and I will use these terms interchangeably because I never remember which one I prefer. It depends on whatever pops into my mouth or my head first when I use it. But this is your type of Legends and Lattes type cozy science fiction and fantasy. The books that have very low tension, that can go out of their way to reassure the reader that everything will be fine. If you're looking for the quintessential warm hug, nothing bad will happen in this book, this is the one to look for. This is rosy sweet, or rosy bright. And then it's moving on to roughly the next year over, I suppose, which I call Cozy with Bite. If anybody can think of a better name for it, please do and let me know, because I, for the life of me, cannot. But Cozy with Bite is, the tension is a little bit higher to reasonably high. On my website I describe it as medium tension. But this is basically the cozy books where we can have some heavier topics in them, and books that can deal with heavier topics. So Cozy with Bite can be a book that deals with queerphobia or transphobia, or it can deal with racism or grief, because these are books that broadly fall into the structural definition of cozy, where it's about leaving things better than the book starts, where it's about community building and coming together to make things better, all the lovely stuff that you want from cozy. It's just, there's a little bit of zing, a little bit of bite that you don't necessarily find in the rosy bright type of cozy. It's still going to be a warm hug feeling, but it's going to have a little bit more bite to it. I think the main books I use for this particular type of cozy that I would say fall under these would be what are they? The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches is one of the main ones, and Light of Uncommon Stars is right on the cusp between Cozy with Bite and what I would call cozy adjacent. And that's honestly just because of the first third of the book. The first third of Light of Uncommon Stars deals very frankly and very openly with the potential negative outcomes of transphobia. And that is a very heavy topic. And for some people, that book will not read as cozy because of that. And for others, it will. And the same with The Very Secret Society. Is that deals very frankly and openly with racist microaggressions. And for some people, that will push it out of cozy, and for others, it will still be cozy. And it kind of just depends on where your tolerance level for what can and cannot happen in cozy falls. So, cozy with bite. It has a little bit of bite to it. Doesn't mean it's not cozy. It's just you can expect to be bitten. It may not be a very strong bite. It will be, at most, it's going to be like the warning bite of a dog who is like, if you do this again, I will attack you. So the warning bite that leaves like teeth marks but draws no blood. It can be the warning bite of a dog who is trying that but has no teeth left. It's a range, it's a spectrum. And then, kind of mentioned it already, I have cozy adjacent for the books that are not technically cozy, but that are nailing the vibes. So I have a couple of stories, and I keep bringing them up, I know, but it baffles me so much that I put in, this is 100% definitely not cozy. And one of them, people will agree with, yeah, okay, that's not cozy. And that is the one that switches into full body horror about halfway through. And then there are the ones where people are like, no, this is cozy. This is really cool. You should read this if you want a cozy book. And it's a book that has like a major character death on page, or has like torture on page, or it killed the dog. It's like all those topics where it's like, this puts a book outside of the cozy genre because of the topics that it deals with, but it's still kind of nailing those vibes in different ways. Like, they can be about community, they can be about leaving things better than you found them. It can be because 90% of the book is cozy, it is just the last 10% where everything goes completely wrong. But there are books where it's like, if you give this to a reader who is looking for rosy sweet or rosy bright cozy, they will be deeply unhappy because it's too much tension. It's too much bad stuff happening. But if you give them for readers who are looking for cozy with bite, or something that has those cozy vibes and has some heavy topics that it wants to deal with, it can be perfect for those. So they overlap. A lot of these overlap, honestly, because some of it is just really, what do you think it fits into? The genre is very malleable like that. So we have those. And then the last one I have is cozy romantasy, or cozy romantasy-esque. And this is basically literally any of the three before, but within a very strong romance plotline. This does not necessarily mean that the characters are going to be in a romance, although very likely they will be. But this is basically the cozy science fiction and fantasy that also has a very strong romantic plotline. Because one of the things that happened with the quick succession of the popularity of cozy fantasy and then romantasy was that cozy science fiction and fantasy very, very, very quickly started to kind of, in practical terms, become a subset of romance. Something to 80 to 90% of cozy fantasy published today is going to fall very specifically in romance plotlines, and most of the percentages that doesn't is going to be young adult or middle grade fiction. Why are you losing so much hair? I know you're shedding, but why do you shed so many hairs? Could you shed a little bit less? We cannot shed a little bit less. But so, point being, I wanted a way to really specifically say, if you want romance in my books and have it like be roughly central, this is the category to look for. Or at least if you want the romance tropes, this is the category to look for. Because that just helps people, because then you will know when you pick up a Rosy Sweet or Rosy Bright book by me, or you pick up Cozy with Bite, you will know, like, this is not necessarily going to center on a romantic type of plot. It's going to have different types of plots. So that's kind of what my thinking was there. And also because, you know, if you are looking for that tiny percentage of cozy science fiction and fantasy that is not romance, it's very helpful to have these categories like this and know that the specific romance-centric books are going to be in their own little category. Like it helps people find the books that they're looking for, basically. At least that's the hope. And that is currently how I've divided my books. It's something that I'm still, excuse me, it's something that I'm still mulling over and thinking about, because, you know, we could maybe narrow it down a little bit further. We could make a more strong distinction between cozy with bite and cozy adjacent. There might be a case for splitting up Rosy Treat and Rosy Bright into two slightly different things, depending on the author, if you want to do that. It may not catch on, like somewhere mainstream may be like, oh, hey, this is a really cool term for these books, and I may listen to it and be like, oh, this is 100% what I call this, but this is the term that caught on, so then I'll change it to help people find my books, all that kind of stuff. All of that is possible. I do wish you would shed less, because I hate it when your hair is in the frame. Yeah, why can't you not be in the frame? Just tufts of your hair floating around. But yeah, so this is kind of how I've landed on dividing my cozy science fiction and fantasy, and hopefully it's a way that will actually help readers find the books that they're looking for. And it's a work in progress. Hopefully also talking about it like this will, you know, help people understand the different types of cozy that exist and help people find what they're looking for. So until next time, I hope you have a lovely time. Until then, bye!